Hello everyone, I am Dinkar Goyal and today I will be presenting my final project presentation for CSE 564. So I will be presenting on an important topic, yet it is very less talked about, that is suicide rates. So first, I have taken the dataset from WHO containing different attributes that I will be discussing in my presentation today. So I will basically divide my presentation into two parts. First, I will talk about the different types of plots and their interactivity behaviors. And second, I will talk about the analysis and inference that we can get from this dashboard. So first, I have done two types of visualizations. One is standard visualization, the other is no standard visualization. In standard, I have done stacked area chart, line chart, scatter chart, and in non-standard, I have done choropleth map and parallel coordinate plot. So these are the interactions that I have implemented in this project, and these are the inferences and analytics that we will get from this project. So moving on to the dashboard. So this is the main dashboard that we have. So first is the choropleth map. So this map is for the whole world, and here we can hover over each country to see the average deaths over the period of 27 years, that is from 1990 to 2017. So if I hover over Russia, the average deaths there due to suicide is 36, whereas for United States, it's 12. Also, the lighter shade countries correspond to the lower rates, that is like Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and the darker ones have higher rates of suicide, like Greenland, Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and so on. Next is the PCP plot. So this plot shows the potential factors such as depression, violence, and homicide that might cause suicide deaths. Here we can check for a particular dataset using the brushing feature, and we can also move about the axis to see the correlation between different attributes. The third one is the stacked area chart. So this chart shows the suicide rates based on four different age groups. The first one is 5 to 14. The second is 15 to 49. Third is 50 to 69. And the last one is 70 plus. So here we can see the overall suicide rates have been observing a decreasing trend. Also, we can see the patterns for a specific number of years using zoom and pan function. So if we want to see the patterns from 1990 to 2000, we just need to draw this box over the graph, and it will show us the patterns for that area. The fourth one is the scatter chart. This chart shows the suicide rates based on gender. Here the bubble size denotes the population size. So the bigger the bubble, the bigger is the population. We can see that males are more prone to suicide than females, and the countries having higher populations have relatively comparable rates between both the genders. But in smaller countries, the males are predominantly more likely to commit suicide. So let's take an example. So we can see India and China are the more highly populated countries, and their ratios are closer to 1. Whereas Sri Lanka, Belarus, Kazakhstan are some of the smaller countries, and their ratio is far away from 1. The fifth plot is a line chart that shows the suicide rate comparisons between 4 countries and the world. So the first one is China, then India, then Russia, and United States. Also, we can use the brushing feature to zoom in on the chart for that particular period. We can move this bar around to see the trends during that period. So if we want to see the trends during 1990 to 1996, then we need to just select those areas and it will show us the trend for that. Right. Also, one more thing that I would like to point out here is While selecting a particular timeline here, it will also update the dataset for choropleth map and will show the average number of deaths during that period. So if we want to see the average deaths during 2000 to 2010, we just need to move this bar here and it will update the overall deaths in the choropleth map. So moving on, now I will use the interactivity among these plots to bring out the inferences about different countries. So we can see the most affected countries here are Greenland, Guyana, Suriname, Lesotho, Russia, Ukraine, and Lithuania, right? So Greenland is also called the suicide capital of the world. The main reasons for suicide here are depression, violence, and homicide. So if we click on Greenland, the data gets updated with respect to Greenland. So we can see the PCP plot here for Greenland. So you can use the brushing and you can see the overall trends that are emerging from this PCP plot. So in the earlier years, the depression and suicide rate was very high in Greenland. Due to this, many people were committing suicide. So also we can see here that depression, violence, and homicide are positively correlated. And as we move along, all the three factors are decreasing at a constant rate. Also, from this graph, we can see that the overall trend in suicide rates in Greenland are decreasing, and the most number of suicides are done by people from age 50 to 69. Right? From this graph, the solid line shows the suicide rates for males, and the dotted line shows the suicide rates for females. So we can see a clear gap between male and female suicide rate. And also both of them are decreasing at a constant pace, and male suicide rate is decreasing at a more rapid pace than the female suicide rate. So we can also see that globally the suicide rate for men is twice as high as women. In countries with lower population, this ratio is even higher. Now moving on to the next country, that is China. So while selecting China, everything got updated with respect to China. So in China, China is one of the countries that has been leading to curb the suicide rates and has experienced the highest fall during these years. So if we can see that the depression rate suddenly decreased for China during 2002 and 2010. So these were the years when the depression rate started to decrease a lot. Also, as the population of China is pretty high, we can see that the male and female suicide rates are comparable here. And as we go along, the females have started to commit suicide lesser than the males. So it is a positive trend that we can observe from China. Also, we can see the world data set as well. So here we can see that China was China was comparable to the world data set in the initial years till 1996. And as we move along the timeline, the suicide rates in China has decreased rapidly as compared to the world. Now moving on to the third nation, that is the United States. And now every map is updated with respect to United States. So for United States, we can see that the depression and suicide rates were negatively correlated earlier. And as we move along, the depression rate increased a lot, and the suicide repression rates were also increasing. Also, one interesting thing that we noticed here is the deaths from violence is very low in United States and is half the suicide rate deaths. And the same can be observed for homicide deaths. Like suicide deaths are twice as more common in the United States of America than violence and homicide. Also, we can see a clear disparity between the male and female suicide rates. So males are more prone to suicides in United States than females. Also, as compared to the world, the United States have observed an increasing trend in the suicide rates for male as well as females. So this is a very alarming statistic for United States, and they need to do something to curb this effect. The third, we can see the country of Russia. So in Russia, we can see that there is a spike during the 1990 to 1995 years. So this can be due to the fact that during those years, there was a dissolution of the Soviet Union and there was Chechen war and the incomes were dropping. So due to that, the depression rates were increasing that we can see from this graph, right? And that's why it has seen a upward trend during those years. So after those years, it has seen a decline in the suicide rates, and the same can be seen from the PCP plot as well. So with respect to gender, the males are highly prone to suicides in Russia. This can be due to the fact that Russia is going to a war, then males are more likely to participate in that war than females. So they are committing more suicides than females there. So that's why there is a bump in the graph here. Another country that we can see is India. So India saw a decrease in suicide rates, but has an alarmingly high number of youths committing suicide. That is a very important statistic here. So we can see that the group of 15 to 49 age group is committing a lot of suicides. Like the suicide rate for them is near 30 to 35%. That is very high. And from this graph, we can see that the male and females are comparable and are more equally likely to commit suicide, right? So this can be also seen from this graph because the male and female suicide rates are comparable, so the bubble is closer to the parity line. So if we use the reset button, it will reset the entire graph, right? And also we can see here the people from 50 to 69 and 70 plus are more likely to commit suicide due to the loneliness and marriage issues or economical reasons. So there can be multiple reasons such as these three, right? So from this dashboard, we can conclude that the main reason for suicide is depression. Like suicide is a leading cause of death and twice as more as violence and homicide. Also, we can say that males are twice more prevalent to commit suicide than females, and the ratio is even higher in countries having lower population. The highest suicide death rate is among the old age and the middle aged people. So we can take measures to identify such groups and we can help them in whichever way we can to curb the suicide rates that can be easily preventable. That's all. Thank you for your time.